Is there a place that the parents and the coaches can go? Because a lot of times coaches can't go to. They're not going to be going to medical school. They're not going to be. They can't always go to clinic. And I know that the web just has a tremendous amount of information on there. But that information can be put there by anyone. And is there a recommended place that you guys might know of where one could go and see the types of stretches? Because we had Steve on last week, and he was really only able to show one type of stretch this way, which works part of the shoulder and then behind the back. But the whole range of motion with the pitching and whatever elbow and tendons and I had said ligaments. You corrected me.
Well, you got ligaments there too.
Yeah, but it's the tendons that you're kind of loosening up in your hands and your wrist and stuff.
Sure. Well, first of all, I think the coaches are going to lead the warm-ups. I think it's the coaches that are going to have to educate themselves more on warming up their players.
Right.
Now, you can go to some reputable websites, their national softball associations.
Sure.
You may know the
ASA.
ASA. I would look to them to their websites,
sure.
and they're going to be some links in there on just some warm-ups for specific for that sport, and
right.
then you're not going to do a lot of too many different ones because
right.
you need to have it done in an efficient amount of time so you can get out there and play
sure.
the game. So I think that if the coaches educate themselves, lead the warm-ups, and they'll help the parents follow up with that if they're working out with them on their own.
Right.
You talked about when you first introduced a child to softball, which great example. I was wondering when I first came this wonderful ball on the table. I was wondering what you're going to do with it, but it was a good tool to use to explain to someone who's very young that you want to catch something soft and build up your confidence.
Right.
But if you then take this now to players that are actually playing with softball, they're going to with a softball, and they're going to start playing on the field, and it's cold weather. You're not going to start tossing the ball from first base or from second base to home. You're too far apart. You're not warm. You do have to start close,
right,
and work your way back. The professionals do that.
Correct.
Professional baseballs. The Yankees don't take the field and start wheeling that ball to home plate from center field. They start close, and then they go with the long throw.
They work themselves back.
Once they warm up that muscle from repetitive throws, then they have then they can call on those muscles to really throw hard.
Right.
And it's the long throw that builds up the muscle.
Long throws,
If you want to strengthen a child's arm, it's the long throw.
Right.
Once you get to a long throw, and that's really where it builds up the strength in the arm. But you have to work backwards. Start close and then work long. And I think, again, your coaches are going to be the ones that are going to lead this warm-up.
Yep.
If it's cold, run your players around. And nobody wants to run. Remember, kids, we run all the time in that age. But you need to warm up.
Right.
So if it's cold, get them to run around the field a little bit.
Get the blood flowing in the muscles.
Absolutely.
It's funny you say that because one of the things that we always did warming up was perhaps 6 or 7 feet apart, and the only thing that the girls would do is just throw the ball to each other like this, and then they would throw it, and then they would slowly move back, and then ultimately long drills. If you just start out with the long drills, guaranteed injury. I don't know of any girls ever
you're going to
hurt themselves going like this.
You're going to injure your arm. Now, the other thing, we're talking about warm-up, we're talking about preventing injuries.
Yes.
Everybody at the field, both teams should have a first aid kit.
Right.
And everybody should have that. You should have something for cold, for ice, to put on an injury right away, something to immobilize. And it's important to have a little bit of knowledge about first aid.
Sure.
Because if you have a severe injury on the field, you've got to know that you need to call in a professional, which would be call 911 and get an ambulance out to that field.
Sure.
Before somebody moves them if there's a severe injury, or you sense there's a severe injury.
So I might remind all of the coaches out there that to protect yourself, under the Good Samaritan rule, and just as a coach of the players, there are safety courses mandated for you to take. I know Rutgers, and there's a couple of them, and we've all been through them many times, but it's a good idea to do it because forget for a minute protecting yourself. You're doing the right thing for the players in that if something happens, you have the ability to react and not be looking over at the parents. Is anybody a doctor? Oh, how good is it to have a doctor in the house?
There you go.
So
all good stuff.
It is all good stuff. So I've been on the field, and it kind of goes because players. I mean, I've seen broken ankles. I've seen the nastiest of what we refer to as raspberries, and kids sliding in, and most broken ankles and things like that are sliding into a base that doesn't move that should have, and it's usually the player doing the sliding, and it's not that they did anything wrong all the time. It's just going to happen every now and then. Unfortunately, those kinds of injuries. Just one quick funny story, and everybody who listened in last week will remember Adrian Hunter calling in. And, oh, man, she had a raspberry that it had to be about 18 inches long and about 12 inches wide. And the doc happened to be on the field at the time, and it was so funny because he got over her. I don't know if you remember this. It was in Wall Township. And everybody, and it was Adrian Hunter. And Adrian was such a trooper. I mean, there were no tears, but I think her parents were crying. But the doc gets over her, and he goes, "Clear, clear." And everybody started to laugh and broke the tension, and then he was able to get her attention. Sure. And now she's focusing on him, and he's able to help to clean out the wound at the time. And if you knew Adrian, an hour later she was back on the field.
Was she safe though?
She was safe.
Or was she out?
No, when Adrian's coming, the other guy always gets out of the way.
That's for sure.
But it's but you just said an important thing that the coach needs to be prepared and can't always rely on other people. And it goes without saying. It unfortunately we have to say it is that a first aid kit with the necessary tools to immobilize an injury and ice is huge. And in fact, give us the routine for injuries because I know you've never been injured.
Never been injured. Ice, ace, and elevate, of course.
Yeah.
But probably the more salient point on the field and play. A fractured ankle, a broken bone, you can splint that a little bit and maybe get the player off to the dugout and get her squared away. But it's the head and neck injury that's the major one that we worry about because even small movements for that patient, for that injury, can exacerbate very, very serious problems with the spinal cord.
Right.
I'm sure we all know stories.
Yep.
So when you do have faced with that situation where there's a head or neck injury, especially if there's any tingling or numbness or concussion, that sort of thing, it's best to leave the patient, leave the player right there.
So
call
the
that 911 number.
Yes.
That John
out to the field.
But don't be moving that patient.
Right.
In fact, if anything, immobilize the neck so the patient can't move.
Right.
That's so vitally important because that could mean the difference between walking and not walking at the end of that day.
Wow.
So, the other things, fractured ankle, painful and twisted up, you can support it, get the patient off the field a little bit to a safe location. But for the head and neck injury,
don't move
that patient.
And it brings us to another point, and we had this conversation, so we'll reiterate it again, since we have the absolute professional of professionals, the doctor telling us not to move a patient with any type of head or neck injury. We're going to go back to one of the skills that we talked about in sliding, and we'll say it once again, we never ever teach, and in the Toms River Girls Softball League, it's not allowed. We never ever teach a female player to slide head first. There's no good reason for it. And the very best players, and I've mentioned her name before, Michelle Neveling, absolutely is an advocate of never teaching kids to slide head first. Nothing good can come from it. If at best you can get a broken hand or thumb or wrist, and at worst, as you said, it could be very, very bad head injuries and neck injuries. So, in talking about that, and since we got here a little bit, unfortunately, there are going to be times that we do everything right from a warm-up standpoint and from a technique standpoint, but yet we still are going to have injuries. And we talked earlier about above and beyond a break or an accident, the most prevalent type of injury is overuse type injuries, and it could be for any player.